I gifted my parents a $425,000 seaside mansion for their 50th anniversary. When I arrived, my mother was crying and my father trembling. My sister's family had taken over. Her husband stepped toward my dad, pointed to the door, and yelled, "This is my house. Get out." My sister laughed until I walked in and silence fell. My name's Thomas. I'm 37, the eldest kid, the one who fixes things. I'm a neurosurgeon. I live out of a locker at the hospital and a suitcase at home. I track my life in 4 a.m. pages and/or schedules. I don't drink much. I run when I can. I save almost everything I make because I grew up on overdraft fees and we'll see next month. I was the kid who translated grown-up panic. It'll be fine. I'd say at 10 years old while Mom cried over late rent. I learned the taste of fear and the shape of emergencies. I learned to be useful. 2 weeks ago, my parents hit 50 years married. I wanted them to have a real win. A place where the air smelled like salt and the floors didn't squeak and nothing reminded them of coupons or secondhand furniture. I found a small blue house above the water. A little crooked, yes, but warm. White deck. 2 palms out front, windows that sing when the wind pushes in from the bay. $425,000. I closed it in their names, set up the utilities, stocked the fridge, hid a note in the silverware drawer for late mornings and loud laughter. Love tea. I didn't tell anyone else, not even my sister. On the day, I drove down with a cake and a bottle of sparkling cider. The ocean was clear and the sky was that annoying perfect, and I felt stupidly happy. I parked in the driveway and saw someone else's SUV already there. That wasn't right. The front door was wide open. The screen banged in the wind. I stepped inside. My mother was in the kitchen holding a dish towel like it was a white flag. Her eyes were red. My father sat in a chair, shoulders hunched, hands shaking, boxes everywhere. Loud voices from the hallway. A child's cartoon blaring in the living room I hadn't even turned on yet. I barely got out. Mom, when he appeared, my brother-in-law Kyle, bare feet, beer in hand, football shirt. He planted himself in front of my father, jabbed a finger toward the door and yelled, "This is my house. Get out." From the couch, my sister Julia laughed. "Relax, Dad, we're just getting settled." The plastic cake lid dug into my palm. Something in me went very, very quiet. I should explain the backstory before the room I loved turned into a battlefield. Julia is 2 years younger. In our house, she was the artist, then the free spirit, then the it's just a rough patch. My parents did what they knew. Sacrificed, defended, minimized. I did what I knew covered. First it was textbooks, then a semester, then a down payment for her first apartment just until Kyle's startup lands. When the startup landed, it was on my wallet. I paid for braces for her oldest when their dental plan had a weird deductible. I financed a used minivan when the bank said no. I co-signed a lease after the eviction. There are Venmo notes that read like diary entries. Julia electric bill, Kyle job interview suit school trip for Mia rent again just this one last time. Every transfer felt like control, like I could sand down our family's big ugly edges. I was wrong. My parents helped too in smaller, more bleeding ways. Mom packed groceries into Julia's trunk and called it cleaning out the pantry. Dad let Kyle use his tools and get practice on repairs that ended up costing more to fix. The chorus never changed. You know your sister. Not everyone's like you, Thomas. You were born old. In residency, I slept on call room mattresses and sent money on broken Wi-Fi at 2 a.m. because the landlord is threatening to change the locks in the morning. Somewhere along the line, I became a card you swiped without thinking about the balance. When I found the Seaside place, I planned it like a surgery. I put the deed in a trust with my parents as lifetime beneficiaries. I paid the taxes out 20 years on a dedicated account. I prepaid the HOA. I replaced the locks and then looked at the keys in my hand and felt like I was holding a life raft. I told Mom and Dad 1 week before the anniversary so they could cry in private and not drown in attention. We drove down together. Dad touched the banister like it was a violin he used to own. Mom opened each cabinet and exhaled. We sat on the deck and listened to gulls. I said, "It's yours." Dad tried to speak, but his voice broke. Mom said it smells like lemon in open windows. I stayed overnight on a blow-up mattress to test the plumbing. Everything worked. The next morning, I returned to the city to do a decompression on a little boy with a tumor, the size of a plum. The house stayed with them. Here's where the system did what systems do. Julia called Mom, day 2. "Are you at a beach?" "Whose house?" Mom, terrible liar, said, "Oh, we're visiting a friend." By dinner, Julia had triangulated the address from a blurry sunset photo in Dad's Facebook post. View from our porch. She arrived with Kyle, 2 kids, a dog, and the kind of entitlement you can smell from the driveway. Mom told me later on the phone, voice small. They just wanted to see it. Then they're staying for the weekend. Is that okay? I said it isn't a rental. She said, we'll talk when you come down. By Saturday morning, my father was texting some confusion about the house. Julia keeps saying family home. Can you come? Then nothing. Then the call I didn't pick up because I was scrubbed in. Then the selfie from Julia in my parents' kitchen captioned, Home Sweet Home. Manifesting. Comments from her friends rolled in. So deserved. Beach era. One from Kyle. Finally a place where the kids can be kids. My palm started to itch where the scalpel handle rests for hours. I sent Dad a text on my way after surgery. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Love you. I drove straight after discharge. I rehearsed soothing words. We will reset this. We will breathe. We will set rules. I walked into the open door instead. Kyle's voice was already up here. You two are old. Stairs are dangerous. You'll fall. This is a family house. We're family. We'll manage it, Mom tried. It's Thomas's gift and he cut her off. He gave it to you. You're giving it to us. Same difference. Julia didn't stand. She just smirked. Don't be dramatic, Mom. We'll handle the bookings. Bookings. Kyle waved toward the view. Prime waterfront peak season. I listed it this morning. Easy money. You two can have the downstairs during off-sea. I looked at my father's hands. They were trembling like they do when he's furious and trying not to be. This is the same man who once worked 3 jobs and still found a way to show up at my high school orchestra concert in a greasy uniform. He was now being told to move aside in a house he had just learned was his. I was raised on be useful, not be loud. But the last text from Dad had been a request I couldn't file under later. I set the cake on the counter. It looked ridiculous on that table crowded with fast food bags and makeup kits. My voice when it came out was steady. Who told you this is your house? He rolled his eyes like I was slow. Family money, family house. Don't be weird. Julia added a sing-song. We're not asking, Tommy, we're updating. Mom's face crumpled. Thomas, can you just explain? Call pointed at my father again. He can explain from the porch. Julia laughed. Babe, stop. Dad knows we love him. My father's jaw worked. No sound. Something in me clicked into place like a bayonet. Everyone to the living room, I said. Not loud, just surgical loud. The kids paused their show. The dog stopped shredding a throw pillow. Kyle snorted but followed because people like him always believe the room belongs to them. I stood by the mantel under the framed photo of my parents cutting a supermarket cake 40 years ago. I could feel my pulse in my thumbs. I pulled a folder from my bag and laid out 5 documents on the coffee table. Deed, I said, tapping the first page recorded last week. The property is owned by the Ass and Our Life Trust lifetime beneficiaries, Sam and Ruth, my parents, with exclusive right of occupancy. Kyle squinted like the words were doing something to him in English. In English, I said, you don't get a key, Kyle. He laughed. Bro, try and stop me. I tapped the second page, trust instrument. Successor trusting. It gives me the duty to maintain the property for my parents' comfort. It also gives me the obligation to remove anyone who interferes with that. Julia's tone slid sugary. Thomas, you can't be serious. We're helping. I slid the third. A color screenshot. The Airbnb listing you just posted using photos you took without permission. The description. Entire home. The house rules. No owner on site. The availability calendar. Booked out every weekend through August. The payout. Bank account ends in digits that match yours, Kyle. I blurred them for the kids. Kyle shifted. So what? Your parents could use the cash. Man, I put down the fourth. A printed group chat thread from last night that Julia didn't know Dad had forwarded to me. Her messages in gray will get him on board. He always caves if Mom cries. I'll guilt him about med school loans. So excited to finally have a beach base. Julia reached for it. I covered it with my hand. I placed the fifth, a laminated copy of the HOA rules. I ran my finger down to the clause. No short-term rentals. Here's what's going to happen. I said, you're going to pack your things today. You're going to delete the listing. You're going to text every person who booked and tell them the home is unavailable and issue refunds. You're going to apologize to Mom and Dad for frightening them in their own kitchen. And you're going to leave this house key on the table. Julia blinked like she'd misheard. Then she laughed, trilling and high. Or what, Tommy? Or I said I will perform my duty as trustee. Kyle took a step toward me. Duty this, he said, and he actually puffed his chest like we were 12. Mom whispered, Kyle, please. I don't like yelling. I like precision, so I kept it surgical. I set my phone on the table. Screen up. On it, a drafted email to the HOA board with attachments. A second email to their council. A third to the county recorder with the Airbnb link. And a request to flag the parcel for illegal use. A text thread opened with a locksmith named Victor, who was parked 2 houses down because I called him from the highway when Dad sent that fearsome confusion. Pal saw it and shuffled his weight. You wouldn't, I would, I said, and I already did. Julia reached for Mom. Mom, tell him. Tell him this is family. Mom didn't look at her. She looked at me. Thomas, she said, voice trembling. Do what you need to do. Kyle's face changed. He pointed to the door again, the same stupid gesture that had lit the fuse. Old man out. I stepped between Kyle and my father. My hands were steady because I've held brains that pulse like birds. Point at my father again, I said quietly, and the only door you're going through is the one Victor is about to lock from the outside. Silence. Not even the cartoons. Julia tried a last angle. You're cruel, she said. You're abandoning your family. I exhaled. I am done being your wallet. That's not abandonment. That's a boundary, Kyle muttered. We'll see about that. He lunged for the folder. Maybe to grab the deed. Maybe to rip up paper like that could kill a trust. I simply picked up the papers, tucked them away, and turned to Dad. Dad, I said, would you like to stay in your living room? He swallowed. Yes. Then everyone who doesn't live here go pack. No one moved. The doorbell rang. Victor right on time. It took 3 hours because chaos always takes longer to unwind than to start. Victor changed the deadbolt while Kyle performed a quiet little tantrum in the driveway. Whisper yelling at Julia, kicking at the curb, calling someone to check a legal thing. The dog barked itself hoarse. The kids moved like embarrassed shadows, stuffing clothes into tote bags while half watching me as if I might explode. I didn't. I sat with Mom at the kitchen table and made tea in the kettle I bought. She kept dabbing her eyes with a napkin. I didn't want to tell you, she said. I thought we could smooth it. They came in so fast. They said it would be easier for us this way. No stairs for your father, less to clean. They said they'd take over the hard parts. The hard parts are the parts that mean ours, I said. She nodded. A small guilty nod I know from every time she apologized for the weather. Dad stared out at the water. I thought I'd be stronger, he said. I should have told them to leave. You called me, I said. That was the strong part. In the living room, I opened my laptop, connected to my hotspot, and forward canceled every illegal booking. I wrote each customer listing removed by owner. Refund issued, I attached the HOA rule for the one who threatened a review. I drafted a short letter to neighbors. You may have seen cars. There was confusion. There will be no short-term rentals at 24 Sea Spray. Julia tried to reframe it at least 3 times. First pass. We were just excited for them. She sat on a packed suitcase, face arranged into soft hurt. I wanted the kids to be around their grandparents more. You know how you work. Second pass. It makes sense if you think about it. You're never there. They're getting old. We're the ones with energy. Third pass. When I didn't argue, didn't bite, she went for blood. You think money makes you the parent, Thomas? It doesn't. You buy things so you don't have to be a person. I bought a house for our parents. I said, I didn't buy a permission slip for you to steal. She flinched at the word, then went cold. Well, remember this, she said. I hope so, I said. Kyle refused to hand over the key. Come and take it, he smirked, which would have been cute if Victor hadn't installed the keypad lock 10 minutes earlier. I reached past Kyle, pressed Eero, then reprogrammed it to a code Dad chose while Kyle watched all his leverage sink in the sea air. He tried another angle. You think you're clever with your papers? He said, I know a guy. I know the county clerk, I said evenly. And your guy is about to tell you a trust beats a tantrum. He stared at me like he was trying to decide if I was bluffing. I wasn't. When they finally carried boxes to the SUV, Julia paused on the porch. You could have just talked to me, she said. I have been talking to you for 10 years, I said. Her mouth tightened. You'll regret this when they need help and you're not around. I looked at Mom pouring tea. I looked at Dad's hand finally still on the armrest. I am around, I said. For them, they drove away. The dog yapped at the window like it had an opinion about property law. After they left, the house changed temperature. It was the same air, but not the same air. I could hear the ocean through the screen. I could hear my parents breathing. I went room to room with a trash bag, picked up juice boxes and a plastic tiara and 2 socks that didn't match. I found a folded printout in the guest room drawer. Kyle's business plan. He'd estimated monthly profit at 5 times the HOA fine. In the margin, Julia had written, "Tom won't say no if Mom cries." I put the paper down like it was something sharp. Mom kept apologizing for the mess. I kept saying, "It's just crumbs." When the sun slid down, Dad took my arm. "Son," he said, "I don't know how to say this without sounding like I failed you both." "You didn't fail us," I said. "You gave us everything you had. Just you gave too much to her for too long, we all did." He nodded and didn't argue because it was true and the truth was a relief. I made a simple dinner. We ate on the deck. Mom told a story about her first apartment, the one with the mouse she named Bernard because he only came out on Sundays. Dad laughed. The laugh I only hear when he's not being careful for everyone else. My phone buzzed like a nest of hornets. Text from Julia. "You made Mom cry from Kyle." "Cease and desist, Dr. Boy," from an unknown number that turned out to be Kyle's cousin. "We're coming down next weekend, right?" We already invited people. I put the phone face down and ate my salad. That night, I set the alarm system. I installed a camera on the porch with a ridiculous smiling chime so even my parents would like it. I put the codes in a folder labeled Happy Things with big letters my father could read without his glasses. I left copies of the trust, the deed, and the HOA rules in a drawer called Boring Armor. On my way out, Mom stood in the doorway with her sweater pulled tight. "I'm sorry it came to this," she said. "I'm not," I said. "It needed to." The next week, everything wobbled like a table with one leg too short. Julia ran a loud campaign in the family chat. Thomas stole a house from the grandchildren. Screenshots poured in from cousins I barely speak to. Julia's Instagram stories, blank background, white text. "When money makes you cruel." Then a photo of my car in the driveway with "Some people think they can buy love." I didn't reply. I built a small wall. I called our aunt, who still says what she means. I explained in simple lines that the house belongs to my parents and will remain that way as long as they live. I asked her not to carry our pain like gossip. She said, "Finally, Thomas," and that was that. I wrote Julia and Kyle one email, polite, firm, boring. I included 3 bullets. All contact regarding the house goes through me. You do not have permission to enter the property. Any violation will result in action from the HOA and our attorney. I CC'd myself. I CC'd nobody else. I set the email as an auto-response to any of their future messages about the house. I promised myself I would not negotiate with a story that always ends the same way. 2 days later, a notification pinged. New booking request. Sea Spray Cottage. Kay had relisted under a different account with a photo of the back deck. I forwarded it to the platform's trust and safety with the deed and trust attached. Minutes later, listing removed. User banned. I didn't feel triumph. I felt like a janitor at a stadium after a game just doing the work. Dad called me one morning to say the house smelled like toast and salt, and that he slept through the night for the first time in months. Mom sent a photo of her feet on the deck rail. Ankles crossed, nail polish bright pink like when I was 5 and thought she was movie star beautiful. They looked light. In the background of all that softness, Julia kept scratching at the wall. She sent me a payment request in an app for emotional damages. She mailed my parents a letter that began, "As your primary caregiver," which was a sentence that had never been true. Kay posted a meme with a syringe and a $sign like I stole organs for money. Their noise didn't change the air in the little blue house. One night, Julia called from a block number. I answered because I'm either soft or hopeful. She went quiet when she heard my voice. Then she tried a new tactic, a whisper. "Tommy, listen. We're behind. Kay lost his contract. We're going to lose the apartment. The kids." I closed my eyes. There is a point where empathy becomes gasoline. "Julia," I said, "I will not discuss the house. So money matters more to you than family." She snapped mask back on. "Boundaries," I said, "are how I can be family and not a bank." She hung up. I let the silence sit like a patient in recovery. Monitored, protected, painful in a healing way. 2 weekends later, I drove down early. Coffee in a thermos. Stethoscope still around my neck from habit. The water had that flat silver look like it was resting between breaths. I fixed a sticky door hinge. I put tennis balls on the garage shelf at the right depth, so Dad could pull the car in without bumping the wall. I labeled the breakers because Dad loves labels. Mom made pancakes, burned the first batch. laughed. We sat at the table and spoke about groceries, about the neighbor named Jan who leaves shells in a jar on the fence, about the pelican who refuses to be dignified. No one said Julia for an hour. It felt like a clean countertop. After breakfast, Mom touched my hand. "I'm going to talk to your sister," she said. Not to argue, to say no. "I'm not asking you to choose." I said, and I meant it. I'm not interested in that scorched earth thing where people declare winners. I wanted my parents to have a porch in peace. Mom smiled small. "It's not choosing," she said. "It's stopping the pretending." Dad cleared his throat. "I should have taught that better," he said. "I taught you to work. I didn't teach you to stop. You taught me to love and to stay." I said, "I'm just learning the without being eaten part." He laughed low, grateful. I walked the perimeter and tightened the gate latch. I checked the camera angle. I printed a little sign for the entry table. "Welcome home, Sam and Ruth." It felt corny and exactly right. Later, alone on the deck, I thought about the headline my sister would write if she owned my story. "I gifted my parents a house and ruined my family." That's not what happened. What happened is I stopped paying the troll under the bridge. What happened is I made a gift and then guarded it so it didn't become a weapon. I used to tell myself that handing out money kept the peace. It didn't. It kept the noise quiet while resentment fermented in the walls. Boundaries are louder at first. Then they're a hush no one can fake. The messages slowed. Julia pivoted to other audiences. Kyle found a new hill to throw a tantrum on. My parents started saying small no's that sounded like yes to their own lives. "No, we can't watch the kids this weekend. No, we can't drive across town to fix your car." They started saying yes to early sandwiches, to naps, to pointing out boats with funny names. A month in, my niece, 16, all band tees and big eyes, sent me a DM that just said, "The house is pretty. Grandma looks happy there." I typed back, "Come visit with Grandma's permission. No bookings, just pancakes." She sent a laughing emoji and then, "Okay." A tiny truce with someone who didn't break anything. Last night, after a late case, I drove to the house because I needed to see it lit from the inside. Through the window, I could see my father reading in his chair. Glasses slid down his nose, the same way he sat in our old apartment when the only light we had was the TV glow. Mom had a blanket over her lap and a puzzle on the table. The sound of the ocean climbed in and settled under everything like bass. I didn't go in. I stood on the sidewalk and let the quiet explain the point of all of this to me. Here's what I know now. Love is not covering someone's bad behavior with your body. It isn't congratulating chaos because the person causing it shares your blood. Love is a house with good light and doors that lock. Love is paperwork that holds when people don't. Love is telling your parents rest and telling everyone else no, I am not their bank. I am not their scapegoat. I am not the emergency exit they pull when the fire they set gets hot. I am their son, a man with a job that asked me to be precise, a brother who finally learned that precision belongs at home. 2. If my sister ever wants to stand on this porch again, staring out at the water beside our parents, she's welcome to, but only with open hands and a real apology, not another proposal or plan. She can belong here without trying to manage the house. Until that day, the home stays as it is. The doors lock. The kids bicker. The windows hum when the wind rolls off the bay. Inside, my parents finally rest easy. That's the quiet truth, if there is one. A gift should never cost you yourself. And setting boundaries isn't unkindness. It's how love keeps its light on without setting the whole street on fire.